That's okay. Monica just walked up. So
Okay.
while Monica's getting settled, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this around and let Janessa face the members that are here. And go ahead and give your opening statement, Janessa, maybe 3 minutes maximum.
Sure. Sounds great. Well, hello, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces, and congratulations, Jay, on launching your campaign today. Your video looks awesome. For those of you I don't know, my name is Janessa Goldbeck. I was born and raised here in San Diego County. My mom was a public school teacher at Vista Unified. My dad drove a tow truck. I was really fortunate to go to college at Northwestern University in Chicago, where I studied journalism and African studies. And as part of my education, I studied abroad in Uganda and Rwanda, where I learned that there was an ongoing genocide in the Darfur region of Sudan, which was just about 1,500 miles from where I was studying. And I was 19 years old. I was really fired up. I wanted to do something about it. So I came back to the States. I started organizing on my campus. By the time I was a senior in college, I was the national organizing director for the student movement to end the genocide in Darfur, which was over 500,000 students around the country. That took me to Washington, D.C. right out of graduation, where I spent the first chapter of my career working as a professional human rights advocate, working to pass federal legislation to protect civilians in conflict zones. And the work actually brought me into contact for the first time with members of the military who were providing protection efforts for our humanitarian operations on the ground. And I thought it would be really important to have people who worked in foreign policy and human rights who had some real world experience in the military. So at the age of 26, as an openly gay woman, I made a kind of a strange choice and decided to join the Marine Corps as an officer. But I thought it was important to get kind of the flip side of the same coin when it comes to civilian protection. So I spent 7 years in the Marines as a combat engineer officer, also served as a uniformed victim advocate, helping service members who had experienced sexual assault. And I probably would have stayed in a bit longer. I loved it, but two things happened. One, Trump got elected, and it became a lot scarier to be an out LGBTQ service member. And two, my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And as an only child of divorced parents, I knew it was my responsibility to take care of her. So I cut short my Marine Corps career, came back to San Diego County. And since then, I've been running a national advocacy organization that represents over 1.5 million vets and military family members across the country. And our role is to lift up their voices in policy conversations that impact them at the federal, state, and local level. I'm really proud to say we've passed major pieces of legislation working with the Biden administration and the Trump administration around protecting public lands and expanding healthcare benefits to mental health care benefits to veterans, and expanding reproductive access to veterans in states where abortion is now illegal through the VA. So it's an incredible job. I love the work that I get to do. When I learned that the County Board of Supervisors seat was going to be open, thinking that Nathan Fletcher was going to move onto the state Senate in a few years, I decided to get into the race. This was back in February before the scandal erupted. And I did so with the support of a lot of my mentors and friends across the county, including Congressman Juan Vargas, Congressman Scott Peters, Congressman Mike Levin, State Senator Tony Atkins, and dozens of other elected officials across the county. And the reason that those folks are supporting me and continue to support me is that they know that I have the experience at the federal and state level to make change and get things done. I want to bring that experience and put it to work for my hometown of San Diego County to make progress on things like the homelessness crisis, the climate crisis, and the skyrocketing cost of living. So that's why I'm in the race. I obviously things have compressed in terms of a timeline very, very significantly. But I'm excited to be here with you tonight and looking forward to having a conversation.
We're fortunately not super sticklers.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Janessa. And so Monica is here finally, Ms. Monica Montgomery, Steppe. So in roughly, we're doing hybrid, so I'm gonna turn back and forth.
Okay.
So roughly 3 minutes or so.
Okay.
Just go ahead and opening statements.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. My deep and sincerest apologies for being late. I had the wrong address in my calendar, and then as I was texting my team to say, hey, I see a lot of dirt where I am, because it took me down where the homes are being built down the street. My phone went out, so I had to go home and charge it, and I drove around for a little bit, like thinking maybe I'll see something or someone that'll give me a clue. But I didn't. We're kind of neighbors. So I live off of Skyline Drive. in Skyline Hills in the city side. So anyway, glad to be here. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being engaged in this extremely important race. As I said, I'm Monica Montgomery Steppe. I serve as the council member for District 4 in the city of San Diego. I also serve as council president pro tem of the city council. And what that really means is I'll facilitate meetings if the council president is gone. But we have been able to build out a council, a stronger council that really includes the pro tem and a lot of the decision making. So I'm very grateful for that and proud of that. So I grew up in the supervisorial district. I went to what used to be called Robert E. Lee Elementary School, if you can believe it. But now it's Pacific View Leadership Academy. The students led the charge to lead to change that name a few years ago. Only a few years ago, though. It was about 6 years ago when the name was changed. Went over to Bell Middle School when it was a junior high school. And then my parents moved to Bonita and I went to Bonita Vista High School. From there, I went to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, and I majored in political science there. I got really sick while I was in college, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but came back home and went to law school at California Western School of Law. So ever since I got that law degree and passed that bar, I've really been fighting for our most vulnerable communities, whether it was fighting against banks in court to save our families' treasured investment in their homes at the time when people were losing their homes and there was quite a bit of foreclosure, or working at the city for 3 different elected officials in the areas of economic justice, youth empowerment and police reform, to working at the ACLU, fighting to change the bail reform system so that it could be more fair and equitable and not perpetuate a cycle of poverty that we see in our society. And now being at the city council, where I'm really having to push the envelope on the policies that come before us, and so that we consider a more holistic approach to the issue that we're facing. So happy to be with you this evening and answer all the questions.
Thank you, Ms. Montgomery Steppe. Okay, so I am gonna just remind the group that is on Zoom that if you do have a question you want to ask, please go ahead and type it in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and specifically ask, and the settings are not right, so I'm going to have to rely on you all. But just so that we're not giving one candidate a leg up over another, I'm going to ask you to send it to SVLG. Are we listed as SVLG Dem Club? What are we listed at? No, we're listed. Let's send it to Cynthia Gerardo. Send the message specifically. So you have to, next to 2, you have to click where it says to everyone and change it to Cynthia Gerardo. So if you want to send a question, go ahead and send it there. And so I'm gonna go ahead and start with let's see. So we started with Janessa on the comment. So we'll start with you on the first question, Ms. Montgomery. Do you go Ms. Montgomery or Ms. Montgomery Steppe? I apologize. Okay.
My name is a whole sentence, so you can call me.
I'm good. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start with one that we kind of heard a lot about while we were debating on whether or not to do the friendly incumbent endorsements for some other districts that are running right now for the 2024 cycle. So Lemon Grove and Spring Valley, we often feel, so Spring Valley is split into 3 different supervisor districts. Lemon Grove used to be under Joel Anderson, and now, and before that, Diane Jacobs. So right, we didn't get a lot of attention from either of them. We often in Lemon Grove feel, and in Spring Valley feel like forgotten communities. What can you do as a supervisor? How will you make yourself more available or more I guess open to hearing about community members' concerns and collaborating with electeds over here or community groups, etc.
Yeah,
I hope that made sense.
It does. It absolutely makes sense. And I think we all heard this also at the Valley de Oro community planning group as well. And so here's what I will tell you. I am a city council member now for one of the most underserved communities in the city of San Diego. Since I've been in office, I have been able to get over $100 million of investment into the community. We've been able to fix roads. We've been able to increase development, our retail, our commercial, many of the things that our community members have been asking for, update our parks. These are the types of things that is my bread and butter every day right now. And so, and how I won the seat. The seat was really up for grabs. I beat an incumbent council president at the time because she was not paying attention to the community. And so this is where my foundation is. And what I would do is, one is certainly have dedicated staff that would attend regular meetings. We've also done organizing in my office that helps community members come together and build out those community groups that are needed for, to have a voice at the office to make sure that your concerns get facilitated to us as an office. I would serve as your council member / mayor in that office. And I have the experience to do that. And that is where the heart of my work is. The other thing that I would do that I have done with state and federal officials, we just received $710,000 for a road in one of our communities that needs to be paid. We received $20 million for our Oak Park Library from the state. They have been waiting on that library for 4 decades, right? So we've been working hand in hand with our state and federal officials to get money into our underserved communities. I have the experience to do this. This is what I do. And I certainly would not forget Lemon Grove and Spring Valley, plus I'm your neighbor. So.
Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. I'm going to go ahead and turn you around, Janessa, to go ahead. And I didn't give you guys a time frame.
Oh, okay.
You you made it right in the 2 minutes.
Okay.
So it's going to be 2 minutes, just so you know, Janessa.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Sorry about that. I was like, I don't want to interrupt her role. If she
Sure.
goes, we'll just make sure Janessa gets the right time. So 2 minutes, Janessa.
Thanks. Well, this has certainly come up in on every door that I've knocked and every community group that we've been to, whether it's Valle de Oro or other parts of Lemon Grove and other parts of the unincorporated area, Lemon Grove, Spring Valley. My team is hearing it at the doors. We're hearing, we feel like we don't really have representation at the county, and it's really important to see the supervisors. I mean, we heard a little bit about it before this meeting started about sort of feeling like people only show up when they're asking for something. And certainly that's one of the reasons why I launched my campaign so early, thinking that the race would be in a couple of years, was because I wanted to take the time to have conversations like this before I showed up and asked you for something. When I served in the Marine Corps, I was responsible for a couple of hundred Marines and sailors, and I learned very quickly that if I wanted to know how things were going for them in reality, that I had to show up unannounced, and that I actually had to be physically present and not just rely on the feedback from my sergeants. So you can't be everywhere all at once, but it's really important. And if I wanted to see how they were really living in their barracks, it meant, actually stopping by on a Tuesday afternoon or Sunday morning to see how things were. And so that's how I lead in my professional life as well. I run a national organization with staff across the country. We're based in Washington, D.C., and I'm obviously out here. But, when you're working with an organization of that size with people all over the place, it's really important to maintain those really strong relationships with individuals. So my pledge to you as your next supervisor would be that not only would I have staff attend your meetings, but that I would be physically present in the community as often as possible, and that I would ensure to hire staff who represent the diverse parts of our district. District 4 is the most diverse district in the county. It includes now big parts of the unincorporated area, the LGBTQ community, Black community, Latino community, AAPI community, and of course, veterans and military families. So I think it's important to have a staff that really reflects that. That's how my organization that I run now is, and certainly is how I would continue to lead at the Board of Supervisors. I'm not sure how much.
Yeah, you can wrap it
okay.
up. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna kind of sort of combine a couple questions because we're getting a lot of questions. And let's see, we have a couple of others. So let me see if there's any that are in the same. Okay. Okay, actually, okay, hold on. I'm gonna combine this one here that I have with this one. So and then we'll do the other one. We'll kind of combine those two. They kind of go hand in hand. So many years ago there were, I don't know what's an SRO. I don't want to sound stupid, but
Single room occupancy.
oh okay. Single room occupancy hotels. Okay, I got it. Okay, so many years ago there were single room occupancy hotels which were torn down and redeveloped. What do you think about building more or converting more hotels for homelessness? Thanks, Victoria. Or if kind of along the same lines, how do you plan to help address housing and homelessness in this area if you don't feel that is the best way? So Janessa, you're first on this one. I'll try to give you a 30-second heads up. I didn't.
Sounds great.
So I apologize.
The homelessness is probably, and housing are the things that come up the most when talking to folks about this race. And I think the county, you know, for many years, the county said that addressing homelessness was not really its role, that was on the cities. Well, we know that there are we have thousands of unsheltered people all across our county, including in the unincorporated areas and in East County cities and North County cities and South County cities. And it's important that the county isn't just helping, but is actually leading on the response. The county is the largest government entity in the region, has the most funding, and Supervisors Health and Human Services, which our workers are on the front lines of responding to the homelessness crisis. So a couple of quick things, a couple of things that I can get through quickly in my 2 minutes. The first is increasing emergency shelter options. So the county has lots of land. We also have, as I mentioned, HHS. And so I would like to see the county take the lead on opening more safe sleeping sites, more safe camping sites, as well as potentially looking into things like tiny homes where people can receive different types of services, and then bringing in service providers to help connect folks to services or more long-term housing. The second is that we have really, failed to meet our housing needs here in San Diego County. Rents are higher than they are in San Francisco now. And a recent study showed that for most people who are experiencing homelessness, $300 to $500 in additional money every month might have been the difference to keep them actually housed, as rents have skyrocketed. So the county has a pilot program right now where they provide a cash stipend to seniors who are on a fixed income who can't keep up with the pace of rising rents. I'd like to see that stipend program expanded and made permanent, and include other types of people who are at high risk of becoming homeless, like folks who are disabled or students who are on a very limited income, or families with small kids. So those are a couple of different things the county can do relatively quickly to address the homelessness crisis. In addition, we want to speed up building in San Diego County so that we can build more affordable low income and middle income housing. And our development services department has a lot that it can do to cut red tape and really ensure that we have we have shovel ready projects that are being built across the county as quickly as possible.
Thank you. I did not give you a warning. I suck at this. So
it's okay. You can just go like this and I'll stop.
So you can be like, hey, 30 seconds. I'm going to go
all
like
good.
this. Okay. Is that okay?
That's perfect.
I don't want to talk over you and have people not hear you.
Feel free. Okay. It's fine.
Okay. So then Monica, do you still have that same question in your head? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really hard to keep time, by the way. Anyway. So.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So yes, the first part of that question was just about SROs, and I think it led into the other part of the question about just housing in general and how that impacts our homelessness population. So a few weeks ago, the city council, I bring this up in context of the larger countywide issue, but it goes to the SRO question. We had before us an anti-camping ban. I voted no on it, and I voted no because of some of the foundational issues that we haven't dealt with around housing. So developers went into downtown and they tore down all of the places that had SROs, and they did not make a plan for the people that they displaced. And now they don't want to look at them. And that's why I voted no. And so I have not been endorsed by developers because of that very reason. I've supported a lot of housing incentives and initiatives, but I will stand up to them. And so, because I think that these are foundational issues, these are not topical issues. We have to dig deeper into the issues in order to provide holistic approaches to these problems, right? And so, yes, our SROs have proved in the past to be a way that people could live affordably. Many of them were in downtown, and unfortunately, they've been replaced by luxury housing, which is why we have the issue we have. We certainly have to attack housing by streamlining. I've supported many of those efforts before, but also we know that in order to the other side of it, with regard to homelessness, we know that the folks that are working in these spaces of behavioral health and mental health are not making the money that they need to make. We know that over the next 5 years, we will need 18,500 people in this industry, and they can't afford to live in San Diego either. So I think we have a responsibility as a county to invest more in people so that they can help those who are unhoused. But we also have to streamline housing, and we have to get to the core of the issue, why we're here, where we are right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So I'm gonna just leave you on there for this. Okay, let me see. So
I'm cheating.
okay, I'll ask that one. That way that one's not in your eyes.
I didn't
So
mean to look.
no, it's okay. So do you support sand mining locally? And please explain the reasons for your position.
No, I do not. I know that there is a lot of energy around the Cottonwood sand mining and not having that be a part of the East County. I support that, and I support community members on that, and it mainly because of the environmental impacts and also the impacts to the people around. There are a lot of different impacts on our roads and in our environment, and so I do not support sand mining. I understand that as we're talking about building in the same conversation, right? That we need materials to build. I also just believe it's 2023, and we really have to figure out how we can obtain the materials that we need to build and not harm the people that we're building for. So I'm not a scientist, but there's so many smart, innovative people that we certainly can figure it out, and we don't have to support further harm to our environment and to our people. So that is my position on sand mining.
Thank you. I'm going to turn you around, Janessa, so that the local people here can see you. And then go ahead, Janessa.
I also do not support sand mining. In my career, I've fought to protect our public lands and to ensure that we preserve biodiversity and have smart development. I'll give you an example of that. We worked with the Biden administration last year to establish 3 new national monuments across the country, one in Colorado, one in Nevada, and one in Texas. And we've also worked to pass, during the Trump years, one of the largest investments in public lands and conservation in the country. And we did that by making it an issue for Republican senators who are up for re-election that year in states that had large outdoor recreation economies. So folks might remember when Trump was still the president, he was doing a bill signing. He held up the bill and talked about the wonders of Yosemite. He meant Yosemite. That was our bill, and we were able to actually get that through. So this isn't just a position that I have casually. It's something that I've really fought for my entire career. I also think that the impacts on the community from heavy duty trucks on the roads, I've heard a lot of folks in the unincorporated areas and in East County really concerned about the lack of prioritization for infrastructure. And I don't think that additional sand mines in our communities would do anything to help the problem that exists already. So no, I don't support it. I do think there are ways that we can make construction cheaper and easier for affordable housing developers. That involves reducing some of our fees and speeding up our permitting process. So we shouldn't let the cost of sand get in the way of being able to build here in San Diego County.
Thank you, Ms. Golbeck. I'm going to kind of stay on the same environmental topic. And if you could list, thank you. If you could list 3 tangible solutions or actions that you will take to address environmental justice issues here in Lemon Grove and Spring Valley and across East County, because we are a very hot area of the county.
And that's starting with me, correct? Yeah.
Yes, starting with you. Go ahead.
Great. Well, I'll start with the county at large, and then I get to Spring Valley, Lemon Grove. First off, I think one of the biggest environmental disasters that we have here in the county of San Diego is the Tijuana River Valley sewage issue. And it was great to see the 2 supervisors take a strong stand and call on the supervisors take a strong stand and call on the federal government to declare it an emergency. This issue is something that we've known about for years, is not rocket science to solve. It just requires political will and prioritization. And one thing that I think that that we can do to make it a priority for the federal government is really make this strong case that is having a national security impact on our troop readiness. Sailors cannot train in the water where the sewage is leaking. And if we make it a national security case, we make it a problem for President Biden to say that he's not supporting our troops by making this a priority. It becomes an electoral issue for him, and it speeds up the gears. So that's something that I think I could play a big part in and would be really eager to do, because it's gone on for way too long. Second, we know that wildfire risk is extremely important, especially in Lemon Grove and Spring Valley and the surrounding areas. I'm really proud to be endorsed by our county firefighters. And one of the things that we've talked about is the impact of, obviously, there's the impact to people's homes and their livelihoods and all of that, but also air quality from wildfires. So I think investing in ensuring that we have technology to appropriately fight wildfire and we're doing things to prevent wildfires from spreading in the first place and polluting our air quality is a really big deal. And I think you said 3 things, and I know you just gave me time. So the final thing I'll just say is really incentivizing people, investing in our mass transit, that's clean energy buses. But I think the county has obviously has some really big lofty goals. That's great, but there are small things we can do, like increasing the frequency of the buses we already have and extending bus routes out to more places in the county, so that people who live in places that are disconnected from mass transit can actually use it. Will get us further to meeting our climate emission goals.
Thank you, Ms. Golbeck, and we'll allow you a little extra time as well. Okay. Ms. Montgomery.
Okay. So I think number 1 is that I would do my best to uphold the current vehicle miles traveled standard that the county has. It is a fairly new standard, but we have state mandated goals that we have to meet. And that standard would reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And so that is where most of the problems are coming from. And so, to keep that standard in place is extremely important, I think, especially for the unincorporated areas, to prevent sprawl. That's extremely important, especially for the unincorporated areas. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, setting up a climate equity index, I think is very important. We did this at the city, and it'd be great to do it for the county, specifically the unincorporated areas. And what this does, it helps us to track the impact of greenhouse gas emissions on are areas that are our most vulnerable areas and our areas that need the most investment. So we use that tool at the City of San Diego to make our budget decisions about the areas that needed the most investment around climate. And we also use it in conjunction with our equity lens with the Office of Race and Equity. I think that that's extremely important. I think number 3 is also setting up a fund for the areas that that are the most vulnerable and that suffer the most from climate change. That is extremely important. There are ways that we can fund that. But the climate equity fund would be extremely helpful and beneficial for areas that have been neglected over the years, like Lemon Grove and Spring Valley, especially when it comes to climate change. So those are some specific things that I would do that I think would have an impact sooner than later on Lemon Grove and Spring Valley.
Sorry.
That's
And
okay.
a little extra time.
Just the larger areas, working on getting the full climate action plan going at the county, and also ensuring that the regional decarbonization plan is one that is most beneficial to community members and maybe not as influenced by utilities. So those are the 3 things plus 2. And I think we're waiting for our moderator to come back.
Yeah,
Oh, a
sorry,
battery.
The phone, the computer is on low battery.
See, this happened to me earlier, so I get it.
Question about vehicle miles traveled. Can you explain
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so oh, sorry. No, apologies. So the county has a transportation guide that really has a formula for how we calculate where housing can be built and where it should not be built. So it's a part of the permitting process. It's a part of the planning process to determine what can go where. So what has happened based on AB, I think it's 732, if I remember correctly, or it might be SB. We have certain mandates that we have to meet that the state has given us with regard to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And the county was sued because the previous formula for vehicle miles traveled did not include. It included a calculation for unincorporated areas, but not the entire county. So that allowed for a lot more building to be done in a lot of areas that created sprawl. And so what the county was sued based on that formula, and then they had to change it. And so the current formula now includes the entirety of the region, of the county. And it does restrict housing, the building of especially single family housing in areas that are, of course, we have wildfire concerns and then additional sprawl concerns, right? There is a carve out for affordable housing in this formula, in this calculation. But it is a very big deal in this race. And it really has, the folks are on one side or the other. And the last thing I'll say is that, there has been also a lot of talk about people of color wanting to own homes, and that being an important thing that, leads people out of California. I definitely understand. My mom's a real estate broker, and we were taught very early the importance of home ownership. So definitely understand that, but we have to balance that with this. We cannot continue to build sprawl, and a lot of the homes that will be built may not be affordable, right? So it's a really big deal in this race, and I'm sure that Janessa has a perspective on it as well. So
Yeah, I was gonna say we should definitely let Janessa.
yes,
speak on
I will
this.
turn you around and
So I wasn't really sure what the question was.
It wasn't a question other than
Okay,
explain what,
She just asked her to elaborate on what sprawl was, right?
no, vehicle miles
Oh,
traveled.
vehicle miles travels. Okay, let me plug this in, Janessa, so you don't go
Sure.
dark.
So there was anything that you wanted to add to that, or?
Yeah, I definitely do. So this is I think a point of nuance between the council member and I. I am deeply committed to meeting our regional emissions goals and to following the the regional decarbonization framework to get to carbon net neutrality by 2045. The state has set emissions goals for us. The state has also set housing production goals for us, and we are nowhere close to meeting them. And when the county did its analysis of where we could build, when it takes into account vehicle miles traveled and emissions that might result from a particular project, one of the things that mitigates or allows us to build in areas is its connection to mass transit. If there is mass transit in an area that is a little further out, that is called a mitigation, and it is included in what's called a VMT efficient zone. And I think that because we are in a housing crisis, and housing, a lack of affordable housing, a lack of middle-income housing, and a lack of low-income housing is at the underpinning of our homelessness crisis. It is at the underpinning, it is causing people to leave San Diego. It's causing people to move to places like Tijuana or Riverside and then spend hours on the road commuting in, instead of taking areas off the map where we can build areas that I should say are already urban and developed, places around Spring Valley, places around Lemon Grove, where people want affordable housing so that the person who works at the grocery store can afford to live in that community. We've taken them off the map if they don't have access to public transit. And the key point of distinction between the council member and I here is that I think the county's priority shouldn't be to remove land from already developed areas from the map of where we can build housing. It should be, how do we get to yes? And that means, how do we get mass transit out there as soon as possible so that that becomes a VMT efficient zone? That's the point of distinction for us. And I think when you look at the transportation study guide that the county did, they found that in the VMT efficient zones that the county has currently, 94% of land is already developed, meaning there's just 6% of VMT efficient zones are available for housing. We are never going to meet our housing production goals if that is the way we look at this problem. We have to think more aggressively about how we create more VMT efficient zones so that we can build more housing. And it's a nuanced, wonky policy, but it's something that I've really come out hard for, because I think that we can meet our climate goals and our housing goals, but we have to be realistic about what some of our own limitations are based on the policies that have been made already.
Thank you, Ms. Goldbeck. Okay, so since we're plugged back in, I'm gonna go back to the roughly 2 minutes on the answers, because I think you guys have evened out on time speaking. I kind of want to piggyback a little bit on what we were just talking about with the environment, and like Janessa got us into kind of back over to housing, and there was like another question about housing, and then and kind of economic development, and there's so many like really important topics that you kind of touched on. I'm actually gonna say I'm not gonna promise.
This is a message.
Okay, I was gonna say I'm not gonna promise to ask that because we've been going for a while. So I want to ask, what is your, because we're talking, okay, I want to make sure I'm asking this correctly. This is going to be my one question. My one question is going to be, we have buildings of luxury condos downtown that are almost entirely empty. And I'm wondering what, if anything, could be done to encourage those units to be filled, which would then, by I guess cascade of effect, open up other housing. And what do we do to ensure that future development, whether sprawled or not sprawled, remains available to people and doesn't just sit empty? Did that make sense? I kind of was thinking about it as I said it.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we do?
I think we've talked. I think we've talked a little bit before about
Yes.
a vacancy tax, right? Did we had a conversation a couple months ago, I believe, about
We did, and I don't want to assume that that is anybody's plan. My personal feelings. I didn't want to imply in any question. So I'm just wondering what we can do to get those units filled, and what we can do with future development to make sure that the housing is filled and not left vacant.
Yeah, this is definitely a concern, and the opportunity to do a vacancy tax is something that other counties have looked at. It does get legally pretty complicated. And the county obviously. The city of San Diego has jurisdiction over the city's policies, and I can let the council member speak to those. But in the unincorporated areas, I think there is more opportunity to incentivize affordable and low income housing by encouraging organizations that build that type of housing through subsidies and reduced fees. And so, the lack of available housing to me is the bigger issue, rather than vacant apartments in the unincorporated areas. I think we have a lot of work to do to even meet the stated goal. But obviously the luxury apartments that are being built that don't meet affordable housing, they're all part of the hope that building more housing helps reduce rents overall. Now, that's really cold comfort to somebody who is struggling to find an apartment to live in now, to say, oh, well, maybe in 20 years when we've hit our housing goals, we'll have stabilized the market. So I think part of the answer comes from how do we expedite building more units that meet people's needs right now, and then also figuring out how can we help people meet the extremely high cost of rent. So whether that's an emergency housing fund that allows people who have experienced like a catastrophic health issue, or have gotten a car accident, or their car broke down and they can't get to work, allows them to have access to some emergency cash so that they can continue to meet their rents. So it's definitely a complicated issue, but something worth looking into. I just wouldn't want to make a determination on that because I'm not sure what the legality of a vacancy tax across the county, how that would work.
Thank you, Ms. Goldbeck. Okay, I'm gonna turn this around, and we're gonna try to make sure the light does not look all weird, because I know sometimes I look weird in the light.
Halloween.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure people can see you when we send this out after. I don't know how to turn it on.
This is okay.
Oh, that's better.
Okay.
Oh no, that's not better. That's better.
Okay. All right. Yes. So, vacancy tax. We under my role as a housing authority, the San Diego Housing Commission did a study on the vacancy rates in downtown specifically. So this is not talking about the unincorporated areas yet, but it kind of goes back to my last point about downtown developers coming in and building East Village and then displacing people, right? So we did do a study on the vacancy rate. It wasn't as high as I thought it might be, but for me, it didn't preclude having some sort of vacancy tax on folks that allow their larger buildings and units to sit there while we have this crisis on our streets. But number two, we do certainly have to be held accountable as government entities. We have buildings that are empty as well. And so, establishing a process for ourselves that would allow us to build at a quicker rate, because I do think some of this is a market issue. I do think some of it is a market issue. We need to add more units, but I also think we have to do things maybe in San Diego we had never done before, like the vacancy tax, like rent stabilization. We have a crisis, and we're not going to build our way out of the crisis that we see right now. We know now from more recent studies that more people are entering homelessness because of economic issues. And I heard someone say yesterday, at the point you realize you cannot pay your rent, your mental health problems start at that point, right? The issues that you're having, they start at that point. So we have to tackle the economic issues, you know, and how much, and we have to acknowledge how much people are struggling to live here. And as a government, regulate that, provide a framework for that. So.
Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. Okay. I am gonna have to pick and choose here because we're at 8:22 and I know Janessa's somewhere else and I'm sure we all want to get to our families. So I'm gonna try to merge a couple and then ask one final question. And so because we're on the topic of economic improvement and kind of low income and those kinds of things. And this was one that I put up earlier. I'm going to kind of combine the two. I recognize they're slightly different, but how can we in particular help to improve our economic development, particularly in East County? And what actions, if any, have you already taken to help low income and or BIPOC communities who are often in those low income communities?
Yeah, so I think I want to go back to this need that we have to increase wages across the board. We worked really, really hard at the city of San Diego, recognizing that our folks had been really in a 9-year pay freeze, and that, you know, folks were just again struggling, and us as the city of San Diego looking within, we had to prioritize our workers within, and were able to deliver very, very significant raises. And I think that that same thing should happen at the county. We have a lot of people in the East County that do work in government, right? So I think that we have to focus on wage increases, and we have to, Steve Padilla has a bill out now that is, you know, he's asking for the state to study what an actual livable wage is in the state of California. I think that that's extremely important for us to determine as we make decisions moving forward, especially, you know, for low income people. How much work do we really have to do? If we were kind of, I'm not going to say $15 an hour is arbitrary, right? It's not. But it also, this is California and the cost of living keeps increasing. And so doing a more recent evaluation of what that livable wage looks like, I think is very, very important. I think in the area of small businesses and incentivizing businesses to come to East County, there are permitting incentives. There's capital that can be provided by our partnerships with our chambers. I've done that work at the city of San Diego, partnering with our ethnic chambers along with our San Diego Chamber of Commerce to provide capital for people who want to start small businesses in some of our areas that are food deserts or that are lacking businesses. We have had quite a bit of that in the district. So I do have experience in that, and have found that more development, even and especially of affordable housing, it increases those business opportunities for the community and for people who want to come in and start their businesses. So if it's done right and strategically, we can have housing, we can have business, we can provide our small businesses with capital. I think doing a lot of things that we did during COVID, but having a better framework and parameters around it to prevent fraud is important. Small businesses, it's a struggle in California. It really is a struggle to keep your doors open. And so in the ways that the county government can help through permitting and also providing capital and developing those relationships with the chambers is very important.
Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. Buddy, I'll be there in a second, okay? Okay, I'm gonna turn you around, and we've actually decided that this will be the last question. I'm very sorry, Jay. Here's what's gonna be the next one. Just because it's getting so late, and we don't know how long it's gonna take people to deliberate. Okay, go ahead, Janessa.
Sure. Well, as a small business owner that started a business here in San Diego County, I definitely understand some of the challenges of navigating processes, and my experience starting my own business and trying to get certified as a veteran, disabled veteran, LGBT woman-owned small business was kind of was a frustrating experience for me. And I actually took that experience and applied it in the organization that I lead. You know, people think that veterans are a monolith, that we're all the same, but really the fastest growing demographics in the veterans community are women of color, and our ranks increasingly represent the diversity of America: LGBTQ folks, immigrants, folks from all different types of backgrounds. So taking the experience that I had trying to navigate the system as somebody with a master's degree, and as served as an officer, I felt like it should have been a lot easier. And I know there's a lot of folks out there who didn't have those privileges or things that I had. So we actually worked with the Small Business Administration in order to create a much more robust outreach to communities who are more marginalized, whether that's disabled folks or communities of color, or the LGBTQ community, to assist them with understanding the resources that the Small Business Administration actually has to offer and help folks. So I think at the county level, I'd like to do something similar, really ensure that we have culturally competent folks who are working in our different departments that interact with local businesses, to ensure that people know what resources are out there, because it's not enough to just have them. People need to know how to access them, especially when it comes to things like capital or emergency funding if there's a shortage or something like the pandemic happens again. Really making sure that everybody has equitable access to receiving that type of funding. So that's one thing. The other thing I'll say is, the county itself is a huge employer, over 20,000 employees, plus subcontractors.
Okay, Janessa, that's time. Okay, then we're going to have closing statements. And Janessa, you did the opening statement first, so we'll have Monica make her closing statement, and then we'll have Janessa close us out.
Well, thank you again. It's getting dark early, so apologies again for being late. But in my opening, I mentioned at the age of 20, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune illness and had to come home from Spelman College. And during that time, my mom had to apply for in-home supportive services to take care of me, and we had to apply for resources just to get by. And so the potential of me being in that seat with the personal experience that I have, understanding that it's important for people who are going through their most vulnerable or at their most vulnerable state to have the type of dignity and respect that they need as they are going through a tough time. And along with my professional experience of leading the council through a $5.2 billion budget, bringing forward many successful initiatives, including the Independent Commission on Police Practices and a program that I'm proud of called No Shots Fired, which reduced gang homicide in the entire city by 65% last year. These are the types of things that I want to bring to the county. So I would ask you all join the San Diego County Democratic Party, join San Diego and Imperial County Labor Council, you join the Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber, along with her daughter, Assemblymember Akilah Weber, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs, Congressman David Alvarez, many of your local officials who have endorsed Living Grove City Council members, La Mesa City Council members, and also the Union Tribune that said that this race was extremely important and that I would be the one in the best position to lead. And so thank you again for being here, and I'm honored and will never be late again. I'll always show up for Lemon Grove and Spring Valley.
That's fine. All right, thank you. All right, Janessa, let me turn you around. Maybe you can address this audience too. There you go. And go ahead and start.
Well, thank you so much again for having us, and I very much appreciate you being out there in the dark as we wrap this up. This seat is incredibly important, and it's really important that we have elected leaders at every level of government who are willing to take on big fights and are not going to accept the status quo. That is who I am. That's who I've been through my career. When I joined the Marine Corps, there were still jobs that the military said women couldn't do simply on the basis of our gender. I questioned that policy. I volunteered to go to an all-male school to show the military that women actually wanted those jobs and could do them, and then worked as an advocate to successfully overturn that policy and open all jobs in the military to anyone qualified to do them. I have been an advocate at every level of government for my entire career. I have a legislative track record of building diverse coalitions to get things done, working across the aisle when necessary to do that. Local government is incredibly important, but we're not going to solve all of our problems just with local government alone. And I think I uniquely bring to the table experience working at the federal and state level. That's why I'm proudly endorsed by the majority of our congressional delegation, State Senator Tony Atkins, State Senator Steve Padilla, assembly members from across the region, and local officials from across the region, as well as San Diego County firefighters, San Diego County Medical Society, Democrats for Equality, and many other groups. So you've got two great candidates in the race, I think, two strong Democrats with very different public service backgrounds. It's an honor to be running with the council member. I think we both would be firsts in the seat. I would be the first openly gay woman elected to the Board of Supervisors. And I think as you're considering your endorsement, I would just like to say that I'd be incredibly proud to earn your endorsement. And I hope that this is just the beginning of a longer conversation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna deliberate a little bit. So we're gonna send Monica away, and we're gonna put you in the waiting room. Here. Okay. So the club voted to endorse Monica Montgomery. Steppe. We want to thank both candidates for being here. But it did reach the 60% threshold. So we will go ahead and, if you want to say anything before you leave, Janessa, you're more than welcome to.
Just thank you for having me. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I look forward to chatting with you hopefully in the weeks and months ahead.
Thank you. And then we are going to put the just the question part we're going to send out to our club members so other people will see everybody's stuff. So thank you, Janessa. Have a wonderful evening. And then Monica, if you wanted, I don't know if you want to say anything.
I just appreciate you. Thank you so much for this. And we have 27 days, I think, to continue to do this work. It's unlikely, but it's possible to get 50% plus one. So I am working for that. And so I thank you all, and we'll certainly be reaching out.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's helpful, but I thought you might want copies of the question.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I will take one. I will take one.
She says I have. She got some at the house for me. But
Yeah, I'll take, if you have signs, I'll be happy. My street gets a lot of travel.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and end the Zoom. If anybody wants a yard sign, if you could put your information in the chat, I will pass it along to Monica's team and they'll get in touch with you. Or we'll make sure to get a sign for you, and probably one of us will just bring it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go get some and then.
All right.
What? You're not gonna socialize? I'm just kidding. Go have fun. Have a good night.
So great.
I'll be back.
She's in heels. She doesn't take her shoes off.
I know. I'm sure you've had a really long day.
Hey,
Good
you
Lord.
can chat at my house on the 30th.
So we officially adjourned,
yeah,
Carol. Carol, we
So I
adjourned.
will be there.
Sending that information out?
Yes, I will.
So Gregory here is gonna have a social at his house, a meet and greet for Monica Montgomery. We'll send that information out with the club since we've endorsed her. Also, if anybody wants to come, you're welcome to sign up and attend.
Good. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Flyer in your